Hey there, my name is AJ Pickett and I make videos about role-playing games, and lots of them. I upload twice a week with a live stream every weekend. You can also find me on Subscribestar, Patreon and Discord, Facebook and Twitter. Also, there's an option to join the channel as a member, and I welcome any questions you have in the comment section down below. If you like this video or this channel, I welcome you to subscribe to this channel and its very friendly community. He that high growth on cedars did bestow, gave also lowly mushrooms leave to grow. A quote from Robert Southwell from Scorn Not the Least. The creatures we shall be investigating today are new to 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, featuring in the adventure sourcebook titled Wild Beyond the Witchlight, but the Campestri first appeared in the month of May 1993 in the pages of Dungeon Magazine, issue 41, and the adventure written by Ted James, Thomas Zuvich, and illustrated by Terry Dykstra, titled Old Man Catan and the Incredible Edible Dancing Mushroom Band. The Campestri are derived from the Myconids, which appeared in the Monstrous Compendium Volume 2 for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition in 1989. So the mushroom men were well established at that point. The Campestri were the swamp-dwelling, surface world cousins of the Myconids, more or less, but they have some unusual qualities that really set them apart. In the adventure presented in Dungeon Magazine, there is an old hermit who has been living in a little stone cottage in the Glittergummy swamp for the last 30 years, growing his own noxious tobacco cigars and fishing in the nearby salty waters of the coastal swamp, living a pretty good life, if you don't mind the smell of stagnant water and marsh gases. But lately, thanks to a very old potion of growth from a fallen soldier finally corroding through its seals and leaking into a murky pond, some giant mosquitoes about the size of sturges have driven all wildlife out of the swamp woods aside from the fish, a bog monster, very similar to a shambling mound but not very evil and with the intellect of a small child, who has nonetheless managed to train the mosquitoes somehow, and a local population of the mushroom-like Campestri. Quite alarmed, the Campestri have been pestering the old man for a while, as they find the hermit's really bad cigars give off smoke clouds that keep the mosquitoes away. Not that the insects are much threat to the Campestri, but they are really annoying and the swamp will die without its full ecosystem. The Campestri do their best to sing along with the old man, but unfortunately the hermit Catan is quite tone deaf and always sings at the top of his lungs, so the Campestri song is also quite terrible to listen to and it drives the old man's fish away. Plus, the Campestri are prone to playful pranks, such as stealing Catan's clothes when he's taking a bath, forcing him to chase the Campestri, who only do it to keep their friend, the hermit, fit and healthy. It's a great adventure for low-level characters that can very easily be updated for 5th edition and inserted into any campaign setting. Plus, it has all sorts of classic fantasy and actual swamp creatures, encounters, and some very sneaky twists and turns to keep your players very entertained. Anyway, the Campestri from 28 years ago and today are very similar to each other. About the only noticeable differences are that they have had their movement speed drastically reduced, and they have been given a bit of a boost to their individual intelligence, but there's no mention about how a herd of 4d6 Campestri have a sort of collective intelligence that's higher than each member of the herd. Individuals are smarter than your average house cat, while the herd is capable of figuring out more complicated stuff and developing quite a sense of humour. Each Campestri can grow to about 2 feet tall. Some may possibly get larger, but that would be rare. There are also smaller ones. Their size is directly related to how many hit points they have. The larger they are, the more hit points they have. Each looks even more like a mushroom than a Myconid does. They have no arms, no legs, and either a red or purple coloured cap with speckles on it, much like the Amanita mushroom does. They have 2 eyes and a mouth, they may have some sort of a nose, and they move around by expanding and contracting the base root ball, which contains a number of little retractable root nibs. They don't have many internal organs per se, their whole body is made up of the same sort of spongy pale fungus stuff. However, they do have internal parts that function like lungs and vocal cords, and they do have digestive pockets, mostly in their lower half, that contain a lot of dirt, as their diet consists of salty soil found in salt marshes, salt flats and so on. Where there is plenty of moisture, shade, dirt and salt, they can survive. However, they are not creatures that go off exploring, so unless some of their spores happen to settle in the right place, it's rare to find them anywhere other than coastal salt marshes, mangrove forests and swamps. They eat salty mud, and they are, as a result, quite unpalatable. However, they're not poisonous, and they are considered a delicacy by the bullywug, who savour their very salty flesh. I'm told it tastes as salty as caviar, but with a very rubbery texture. They are active during daylight hours, but are inactive under bright sunlight. They prefer mild sun and shade, but tropical heat and humidity doesn't bother them. Although they have a mouth, it has nothing to do with their digestion, and they don't eat with it. To eat, they extend their lower body, digging into the ground and extending their root nibs, and exchange the soil they've digested with fresh salty mud. This process results in desalinization and soil that is ideal for plant growth. So they're actually highly beneficial creatures to have around, a fact that's not lost on farmers that are familiar with them and the effect that they can have long term on their environment. Plus, aside from somewhat annoying habits, they're quite harmless creatures that don't hurt crops and livestock, though animals don't much care for the noises they make. Campestri are very sensitive to vibration and sound. That's reflected in their +4 to the perception skill and a passive perception score of 14. They also have tremor sense out to 30 feet, meaning that they're able to sense objects and creatures near them while otherwise blinded, and invisible creatures can also be detected by them as long as those creatures are in contact with the ground, which makes them very useful and alert creatures to have around. A party of wise adventurers should keep an eye on the Campestri for any odd reactions to things the adventurers may not have noticed themselves. Farmers, foresters, swamp folk, herbologists, and so on will know it's worth putting up with the little mushroom folks' antics just for that benefit alone, as they narrowly escape having their dead body hauled up a tree by a hunting jaguar, which also quite like living in swamp forests. This fine sense of hearing causes the Campestri to be captivated by music. They are able to mimic sounds that they hear, happily singing along in their somewhat nasal, reedy little falsetto voices. I mean, this is your perfect chance for the adventurers to stumble across a bunch of tiny mushroom people in the swamp, belting out a fantasy version of Justin Timberlake's Cry Me a River. How's that not awesome? Break out some Michael Jackson, a bit of classic Bee Gees, some Coldplay, a bit of Jeff Buckley, Frankie Valli, Smokey Robinson. You get the idea. They have high-pitched voices which can be really grating, but can also be very sweet sounding, and they genuinely don't sing to annoy people. They do it because they love it. They just don't realise it scares off fish, startles livestock, and can on rare occasions shatter windows. Campestri are not aggressive. They can thump something with a head-butting attack. They have no bonus to hit one target within 5 feet, and it only does 1 point of bludgeoning damage, but they do have the ability to release a 5-foot cloud of spores once per day, which spread out to fill the area. Any creature that is not a plant, construct, elemental, or undead must make a DC 10 wisdom saving throw. If they fail, they will be incapacitated, unable to take actions or reactions, and their speed is halved. This is felt as a slowing effect that can last for up to 1 minute. However, a slowed creature can make another saving throw attempt at the end of each of its turns, ending the effect, or the effect wearing off. But that does not grant immunity or have a saving throw bonus to any subsequent slowing spore effects, so a group of Campestri can work together to blanket an area with spores for mutual defense. A herd of Campestri are also smart enough to sort of, in an unintentional way, attract dangerous creatures that can come to their defense. For example, the Campestri will gather berries and nuts and deliver them to bears because they want to be friends, and the bears may defend the Campestri if they hear the little creatures making sounds of distress. The mushroom folks may have all kinds of symbiotic relationships in their swamplands that are not immediately obvious to anyone but the party ranger who knows that sort of environment well. In 5th edition, an individual Campestri has an armor class of 12 and only 1d4 hit points with a speed of 5 feet per round. In 2nd edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, they had an armor class of 8 and 1d8 hit points with a speed the same as a human, 30 feet per round. Also, in 2nd edition, their spore cloud covered an area of 10 feet, not 5. And it is noted that the Campestri do understand what spellcasting is, and they primarily use their headbutt attack to swarm a spellcaster, butting themselves against them in order to prevent harmful spellcasting. 5th edition has made the interesting adaptation of groups of Campestri into a swarm. Swarms are treated much more like an individual made up of many parts, so they become resistant to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage, and have immunity to being charmed, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, stunned, restrained, or being knocked prone. Also, the swarm can occupy another creature's space and vice versa, and the swarm can move through any opening large enough to accommodate an individual Campestri. The swarm is treated as having an armor class of 12 still, but they now have 6d8 hit points, and they can attack with many headbutts at the same time on the same target, still with no bonus to hit, but they collectively inflict 4d4 bludgeoning damage when the swarm is still in full health, or drop that damage down to 2d4 bludgeoning damage if the swarm's hit point total is reduced to half or more, which means that half of those individuals have perished. Their spore cloud is bigger, covering a 20-foot radius, but it's still only once per day with the exact same effects. Campestri can understand the common tongue, but they don't speak it unless they are mimicking the sound of another creature. Also, when a swarm is large enough, there is a small chance that they can temporarily deafen those closest to them by use of their shrieking voices. I think Campestri are cool little critters and highly encourage you to adapt and adopt them into your games. They do tend to make excellent non-player characters and can be incorporated as familiars as well. Their tremor sense alone makes them well worth it. Please hit that like button if you made it this far, subscribe if you like what I do, check out my Subscribestar or Patreon for links for all the scripts for these videos, buy some Teespring merchandise, wear your geek with pride, and as always, thanks for listening, and I'll be back with more for you very soon. I wonder actually if there would be a corrupted version of the Campestri, possibly infected or influenced by evil abyssal powers. Zugdemoy's Campestri. That's a terrifying prospect, using their piercing voices to, I don't know, manipulate your brain or something. An evil swamp hag's Campestri swarm. Maybe she's made a pact with Zugdemoy. That's a terrifying prospect. It's always good to flip things around.